Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Frozen Heart, Fated Soul. Episode 3. Kiara. So, Dad chose to send me to this pack simply because our pack was a hot spot for attacks? It irritated me how he felt I was incompetent or something. What did I need to do to show him I'm so much more than he gives me credit for? Yes, I'm not perfect, nor am I the standard wolf. I have 2 disadvantages, but I make up for them in other aspects. I love Dad, but I just wish he could see I was ready to take care of myself. The journey to Alejandro's pack took just under 2 hours. I swear he was speeding way over the speed limit. We didn't speak much. When we did, the tension was just growing and it was getting suffocating in here. Him just looking at me got my core throbbing, and that effect alone scared me. I ended up reading a book or texting Raven. I was so incredibly excited that she was actually joining me. We were going to have a blast, and then there was the blood moon. The chance to find my mate would be high and I felt a little excited, but at the same time, Alejandro slipped into my mind. Would these feelings go away when I met my mate? He parked up outside a very extravagant, flashy mansion. It was completely black and grey with windows across the entire front. I could see the modern interior inside too. 3 large steps led to the double-door entrance, with lights illuminating the rim of each step. Fancy, the dude sure was loaded. I got out slowly and looked around. A large wall surrounded the entire mansion and grounds. Was it just the one mansion? Where did the pack live? Are you just going to stand there? What do you expect me to do? Make myself at home and show myself in? We glared at each other as he walked off to the mansion, opening the door. I ran after him, ignoring the constant pain in my ankle, and followed him inside with just my handbag with me. The inside was as modern as the outside. The theme was black, white and grey. It looked like it was straight out of a magazine. There was no mess or homey touch apart from the perfect ornaments and art that matched the theme of the decor and interior. Is this your house? No, it's the Grinch's. Well, you're as gloomy and depressing as he is. I was just asking. I retorted. Well, don't ask dumb questions, he said, heading upstairs. Do I follow? Guess so. The stairs were carpeted down the center and I made my way up, stumbling as I tried to keep up with him. He didn't turn back as he walked down the hall. It smelled like him. That was the first thing I realized as I passed one of the doors. Slowing down as I looked at the sleek black wood. Want to get into New York bedroom already? He asked, now smirking as he opened the door next to it. I felt my cheeks heat up and rolled my eyes. You wish, I said, walking past, when I stopped and looked up at him. Wait, this is your mansion. I'm staying here. He crossed his arms as he leant against the door frame. Elijah wanted me to take care of you, and I intend to, he said, a predator-like smirk crossing his face. My heart skipped a beat as I watched his gaze run over me. What about Raven? I asked, my voice sounding pitchy. Focus, girl. She's got the room opposite you, he said, making me feel a little relieved. But make sure she stays out of my way. I promised your father to not hurt you. I didn't say anything about her. His words made my anger flare up, but I clenched my fist and forced myself to breathe and calm down. If he dares to touch Raven, I'll chop him to pieces, blend him up and make smoothies. I shuddered at my own thoughts. Goddess, where did that creepy thought come from? But really, imagine an Alejandro smoothie. Maybe I could call it an Alpha King Supreme smoothie. I giggled at the thought. He glanced at me as if I were weird before he opened a door. I guess I can't blame him, I was laughing to myself like a weirdo. I looked inside. It was a nice room, decorated in grey and white. There was a large rug in the center of the room and the king-sized bed was covered in grey and white bedding. The large ceiling-to-floor windows covered the entire wall opposite and looked out over the huge gardens. From here I could actually see beyond the walls, where I saw other houses and buildings not too far beyond the perimeter. Floor-length curtains hung on each side of the window. There was a small chest of drawers on either side of the bed and a dresser on the same wall as the door. Wardrobes lined one wall and a second door led off to what I presumed was the bathroom. "Thank you," I said. I wasn't expecting this. A sudden thought came to me and I turned. Rayhan and Rayhana are here, right? I hadn't seen both in over a year, Rayhan even longer as he was currently doing his alpha training. I was actually excited to see him. Yeah, they will be staying down the hall. They came this morning. Now I'm going to have a full house. He muttered as he walked out the door. I bit my tongue to keep from replying and instead walked over to the bed. I dropped onto it and stared at the ceiling. Being here made me nervous and excited. Alejandro. He was the reason for my excitement. Being here with no Liam or Dad, I didn't trust myself. I was finally free. I could breathe. My mind drifted back to the arrogant Alpha and I bit my lip. Was it so bad to want a piece of the Alpha King? Just the thought sent a throbbing ache to my core and I sat up, just as the door opened to reveal a girl with dark brown eyes and black curls up to her shoulders. Her eaves widened when she saw me. "Kiara!" She shrieked as she ran over to me and pounced on top of me, knocking the breath from me. "Ow! Rai!" I groaned as she squeezed me painfully. "Ouch! Ouch! Ouch! Get off her, Rai!" A deep masculine voice came and I looked to see Rayhan standing there. He had grown a lot. Now towering over 6 feet, he had a small goatee and his curly hair was pulled into a pony. I could see some similarities between him and his uncle, but the biggest difference was his warmer aura and the smile that played on his lips. "Rayhan," I said, sitting up. He came over and I stood up, wrapping my arms around his waist. He hugged me tightly. "You've grown. She's gotten pretty." Rayhana chimed in as she looked at her brother, giving him a suggestive wink and motioning at me. "Time's not changed you," I said to the 16-year-old who had now dropped back on the bed in contentment. "Oh, this means Uncle's back. Let's go annoy him." She got off the bed and Rayhan sighed. "Don't. Be grateful he agreed to let us come," he muttered. "That should be my line," I said. Rayhan smirked. "That was a miracle too. I thought Liam said Raven was coming too." "She is. She should be here soon," I said. They knew Raven well as we were both glued at the hip since forever. "Your uncle was speeding. It was really weird calling Alejandro their uncle. Was it alright to be crushing on my friend's uncle? Wait, he drove you? Rayhan confirmed, curiosity filling his eyes. Yeah, I said nonchalantly. There was a light knock on the door and a young man, clearly an Omega, stood there with my bags. Sorry to disturb you, the king said to bring your bags up. Thanks, you can just put them on the bed. I said. Well, we'll let you freshen up and catch you in a bit. Rayhan suggested. I nodded as the siblings left the room and I closed the door. I took a deep breath. This was going to be exciting. It felt like a breath of fresh air. It was 2 hours later and Raven had finally arrived too. After she had freshened up, whilst I caught up a little with the siblings, we headed downstairs for lunch. We stepped into the dining room to see 3 other people sitting there at the long black table. The high-backed chairs gave the room a rather stoic and regal feel, despite the design being very modern. The walls held some canvas art, all in the same tones as the rest of the house. Elijah's daughter, what an honor! The man said, now standing up. I could tell he was strong. His aura was one of an alpha's Narration, Alejandro's beta. Nice to meet you, I said, looking at the man who looked around Alejandro's age. He had shoulder-length brown hair. I had heard of him but never met him. Likewise, princess. My mate, Serena. He replied smiling, introducing one of the 2 women who sat there. The woman stood up and smiled. She was pretty with brown eyes and blonde hair. I shook hands with her before turning to the last woman who sat with arrogance in her seat. I instantly didn't like the vibe I was getting off of her. I could tell she was sizing me up, just how I had noticed her sharp eyes on me when I walked over to the table. Carmen, head warrior. She said, not bothering to extend a hand, so I didn't either. Kiera Westwood. I said before I took the seat next to Rayhan. Rayhana was between Raven and me. Alejandro sat at the head of the table with Rayhan on his left and Darien on his right. Let's eat, Darien said, as Serena and he both removed the lids to the food. There were a variety of dishes, all mainly Italian. I guess it was befitting with the king being Italian himself. Ah, it sure smells good, Raven said as she began putting some on her plate. I glanced at Alejandro, who sat there as moody and cold as always. He looked up and our eyes met for a moment before he helped himself to some food and I looked away smoothly. He looked effortlessly pretty in whatever he did and I couldn't stop myself from staring. I really needed to get a grip. So, it's actually nice to have some kids around here, Darien said. I could tell he was chatty and I had a feeling I was going to like the couple. Tia will be happy. She's our 13-year-old. Serena explained. I understood that the Night Walker pack didn't really have many children, only those of the warriors, or in Tia's case, her parents being the beta couple. Wow, only a few years younger than me. Rayhana added. So Uncle Al, how are you going to be a good host to us? Alejandro looked up at her, his dark eyes cold. By making sure I don't decapitate you. Rayhana's face fell and Rayhan quirked his brow at Alejandro. Really, uncle? What do you want me to do? Your dad sent you to, I didn't ask him to. So, you don't miss us? Rayhana asked, hurt clear in her eyes. He probably does, I said quietly with a small smile. I don't, Alejandro said, shooting me a glare. I frowned back at him, not caring as his aura seemed to swirl around him. All right, let's just eat, Darien added, glancing between the two of us. I knew he was trying to change the subject. I glanced at him, not missing the curiosity in his eyes either. Leave it, Alpha, they're just kids begging for attention. Carmen spoke, her antagonizing tone irritating me. I didn't like the way she said Alpha, and a sudden burst of irritation filled me. I looked at her, my eyes flashing purple. I could feel my wolf's anger. Calm down, girl, I said to her. I got this. For your information, we're not kids. Just because our opinions don't match the king's, doesn't mean they have no value. Here it doesn't, kid. This is the king's home, she said with a tilt of her head, her eyes turning a deep gold as she smirked slightly. I clenched my jaw, trying to calm my rage. I know, and for that reason, I won't disrespect him, but if anyone else irritates me, I won't hold back, I said icily. Her contemptuous gaze had really irritated me. Oh? Did you forget the part where I'm the head warrior here? When you're just a girl with a limp, a deep, threatening growl tore through the room, making all eyes turn to Alejandro. My heart thudded in fear at the anger I felt in that growl. But to my surprise, his burning red gaze was not on us but Carmen, who had paled slightly. I saw Rayhana and Raven go white as we all felt the heavy blanket of darkness that filled the room, while it emanated from the Alpha King himself. Kiera, I could see the fear on Carmen's face as Alejandro stood up, his hands braced on the table. His claws were out and I saw his canines begin to elongate. Watch your mouth, he growled. I'm sorry, she said, glancing at me slightly confused. Girl, I'm just as confused. Was Alejandro defending me? He's mocked me 100 times. But he never commented on my limp. I felt a warmth in my chest as I looked at him. It's all right, shall we carry on eating? I said, picking up my fork. He didn't seem to hear me, his gaze fixed on the she-wolf. Alpha, I said. Reaching forward, I placed my hand on his hand. He turned towards me, his eyes returning to normal. Our eyes met, but I couldn't read the emotions in his. He suddenly seemed to realize where we were and looked down at our hands, pulling away as if my touch burned before turning and leaving the room swiftly. Rayhan whistled whilst Darien exchanged looks with Serena. Well, that was interesting, he said, scratching his head. Excuse me, Carmen muttered before she too left, not even sparing me a second look. Wow, was it just me or did the arrogant Alpha just defend you? Raven said, looking at me with a smirk. She knew I found Alejandro. I glared at her but she simply winked at me. That was indeed something else, Serena said, trying to sound normal, but I knew it had thrown her off. Darien was watching me with keen interest now and I felt a little uncomfortable. Yeah, Uncle doesn't defend anyone, Rayhan said with a small smile. I guess he's taking the promise to your dad seriously. He must want the strongest alpha around on his side. I didn't say anything. Was that really the reason? I wasn't sure. Maybe we did need to talk, without arguing. These mixed signals were really confusing me. Once you young uns have eaten, we can give you a tour. Serena said. Rayhan and Raven nodded whilst I stayed silent, unable to forget Alejandro's reaction to Carmen. Was it wrong to feel all fluttery over it? I didn't need someone to defend me, but when he had, it made my heart feel things it never had before. It was a while later and we were strolling through the pack grounds. The two warriors my dad had sent, Harry and Greg, were following behind us silently. This pack was definitely different from the usual pack standards. There was indeed a lack of children and the elderly. Those who come to a certain age or want to take a back seat from fighting join other packs. Only those who are willing to fight to the death stay in this pack. Serena said seriously. So, this is basically like a military base. Raven said. You could say that. It is our job to protect packs. We are often situated and stationed at other packs if they need help dealing with rogues or something. Darien added. I nodded. I knew that. Uncle's done amazing. Rayhan said, clearly impressed. I have only visited here a few times with Dad, but I was a lot younger then. I haven't been here before. Rayhana chimed in. I looked at the pack house, or should I say, apartments. There were a few blocks all aligned neatly, made with the same sleek modern design as Alejandro's mansion. The training grounds and halls were a lot bigger than back home. This was indeed a complete military boot camp in a way. I was impressed at what he had accomplished. The man sure was an incredible leader. It took us a good while to make it through the entire area. People were currently working out in the extensive training areas and I could tell millions were spent on it. Over there is our meeting and office building. We usually plan and hold meetings there. You will find Alejandro there often enough, the man works a lot. Darien said. I didn't miss how he called Alejandro by his name. They must be friends or something. Darien paused and I knew he was being mind-linked. Well, I got to go, some business has come up. Have fun. He said, pulling Serena into his arms and kissing her before he rushed off. I had hoped Uncle would spend time with us, Rayhana spoke quietly but we all heard. Dad told you not to expect too much, Rayhan said. Want to go to the pack hall? Serena suggested. I could tell she wanted to cheer her up. What's that? Raven asked. Oh, somewhere the members who are off duty spend their time and chill. It's like a 5-in-1. Bar, arcade, cinema, diner, and a lounge. That's interesting and different. I said as she led the way past the apartment blocks and over to a huge building. The pack ground was huge, although it lacked that homely touch that we would see back home with young pups running around or the occasional garden outside certain houses. It was still an impressive pack. He even had a pack crest. I smiled as I looked at it, 2 wolves, ready to attack, a moon with a crown between them and 3 claws running across the entire crest. I ran my finger over it and smiled. I had seen this same crest somewhere else, but I couldn't place where I had. It was beautiful. Alpha designed that. Serena added. I turned and looked at her, realizing the other 3 had gone inside already. It's impressive, I said. I looked at her and she was watching me curiously. Anything on my face? I gave her a smile. Sorry, it's just. Darien and I were, let's just say, we were shocked when he said he was having guests. Then he stated to have the room next to his ready. She laughed lightly and I felt my stomach flip. Was she implying he was treating me good, differently? Oh, don't think Nuka of it, he's a meanie. I said, making a face. She smiled. Meanie is not a word anyone would use to describe him. He's ruthless, cold-hearted, and brutal, but a good king. She whispered. Her smile was now gone. She shook her head, looking guilty as if she had said too much. For him to even get angry over Carmen's comment says a lot, really. I asked. My heart was buzzing but I tried not to let it get to me. She nodded fervently. Carmen is one of his closest comrades and if he got offended with her words, that speaks volumes. Our eyes met and I simply gave a small shrug. I don't know what you're assuming. But there's nothing between us. I blushed, thinking it wasn't a lie. Oh, I know. She said, looking sheepish. It's strange. We didn't say more on the topic but I wasn't able to brush her words off completely. The pack hall was everything one could want. There were wolves of all ages there, all bulging with muscles and littered with scars. I had to admit they were all pretty, but none matched up to Alejandro. I could see the ones who were marked and the ones who weren't. Females with strong muscles also mixed in with the males, some even put my toned body to shame. I could tell which ones had trained from a young age here and which ones were mated to a wolf of the pack just by their builds. Rayhan, look! Rayhana said as she tossed 3 darts at the board, hitting the bull's eye. Someone cheered for her and she did a mock bow. The alpha wanted me to show you to the hospital. I almost forgot, that was meant to be our last spot. Serena said suddenly. I looked around at the others enjoying themselves. Greg, Harry, stay here. I'm just going to visit the hospital. You both have got to admit I'm safe here. I said through the pack link. They exchanged looks before Greg gave me a curt nod. Take care of yourself and if anything happens, link us. I nodded and sent Raven a text message, waving at her to capture her attention and motioned at her to check her texts. She gave me the thumbs up after reading it and only then did I follow Serena out of the hall. The hospital is actually quite big, she said. We do get a lot injured. I never thought of that. Really? So, you probably have a lot of doctors. Yeah, the hospital has the capacity to hold 700 if need be. Wow! Of course we have a lot more warriors than that, but luckily we have never needed even half of that. She said, shuddering. You weren't from this pack, right? I said. She smiled. Nope, I come from a pack near London. Ah, I did think that from the accent. I answered. Really? I've been here for nearly 14 years. She said, blushing lightly. We carried on walking until we got closer to the hospital. You can still tell. I replied as I now looked at the large white and grey hospital. The crest was proudly presented on it. I wondered what humans would think if they saw this pack. I knew that miles around were barred off as private land, but it still made me curious. Have humans ever come here? Luckily no, but if they do we'd say the land belongs to a rich dude. She said. And it isn't a lie, Alpha Alejandro is very wealthy. She paused at the hospital and looked at me. Are you okay with blood? Of course. I've grown up helping out at the hospital, I replied. She nodded as we both stepped inside. Dad didn't like me fighting and the most I was allowed to do was help at the hospital, but I had actually begun to enjoy it too. I was not prepared for the strong smell of blood that hit me, mixed in with the sterile smell of disinfectant. She walked through and everyone seemed to know who she was, politely bowing their heads. I followed, keeping up, despite the pain in my ankle growing thanks to all the walking. The operating rooms are on the first floor. We have wards and scan rooms on the top floor as well as some consultation rooms. The canteen's ahead. I will also introduce you to Dr. Callum, who will be the one to take care of you whilst you are here. He is the head doctor in this hospital. Oh, I feel honored. Alpha said to make sure you're passed to the best, but don't let it deceive you. Dr. Callum will have you working hard, she said, stopping outside one of the wards. I looked inside and wished I hadn't. There were 3 men, all covered in lots of bandages. I could smell that there was something putrid mixed in the air. Some of their wounds were probably infected. A Wendigo attack, they managed to kill it, but it cost them a lot. I felt my blood run cold. How did a Wendigo manage to hurt 3 bulky warriors? Did I just get lucky when I faced one? A shiver ran down my spine at the thought of what could have happened to me. Alejandro, I don't know what overtook me, but when Carmen insulted Kiera, I lost it. My instincts were telling me to rip her to shreds, but I had tried to keep control, a battle I was losing until she had placed her hand on mine. I closed my eyes. My assumption that there was more between us only seemed to be getting further confirmed. That maybe, just maybe, Kiera could be my mate. The thought sent a knot of emotions through me. I rubbed my jaw, frowning deeply. If it were, it meant the moon goddess hadn't forgotten about me. But wasn't she at least a decade late? I had made up my mind that I was never going to have someone, and that was what I wanted. Kiera messed with me. I had more enemies than I'd ever be able to count. I didn't need a weakness, and that is what a mate would be to me, a weakness I didn't need nor want. The blood moon was less than 3 weeks away, and if that was the case, then I needed to skip the event and avoid Kiera for the night. It was manageable. But then what? Would she wait a few years and then move on and choose her own mate? My eyes flashed red and I felt my anger flare up at the very thought. I was messed up. I wanted her, yet I hated her. I didn't want to give her anything. I had nothing to give her. At the same time, I wanted to keep her to myself, mate or not. Alpha, we have guests. One of my warriors' minds linked me. Who? I replied. I wasn't expecting anyone. Alpha Bill and his daughter. I wasn't expecting them to show up. Although I had business with Bill, I didn't expect him to come so soon. Jasmine was someone I had a bit of a relationship with. The occasional partner and someone the council was pushing me to accept and make my queen. I had been considering it. But Kiera. Her green eyes rimmed with that dazzling blue entered my mind and I knew I was a mess. Well, who says I can't play, even if I accepted Jasmine? Maybe I'd hurt Kiera enough for her to hate me and stay away. I didn't know exactly what I wanted, but Alpha? I realized he was waiting for a reply. Sent Darien to greet them and give them housing in one of the empty apartments. I'll meet them tonight, I said curtly. If they came unannounced, then I was going to keep the waiting. Bill had vast unclaimed land, the land I wanted to search for clues to possible Wendigo or Manangle hideouts. The only problem was, he had a lot of animals and that land was used a lot for hunting and training. If I was to follow a trail and track, I needed minimum disruption. Although I was king and I could just take the land and do what I wanted, I didn't want those who were behind the Wendigos and Manangle attacks alerted. Just then, my phone rang and I took it out of my pocket. Well, I was expecting Elijah, but he didn't seem to want to harass me so quickly. Smart move. The current call was Raphael's. I hesitated. Should I answer it? I rarely talked to him these days. It had been years since we had much of a conversation. He was my only link to the past. The reminder that I too had feelings at one point. What do you want? I answered coldly. Hello to you too, brother. His reply came. I hated it, the warmth in his voice and the fake front of care. Cut to it, I don't have all day. I know, you're a busy man now. Don't put that on me. If you're done, shall I hang up? No, wait. I just wanted to thank you for letting the kids come down. I appreciate it. It means a lot. Rayhan has been on about it for ages. Yeah, well. It's you who never bothered to bring or send her sooner. Guess no one wants to send their kid to a monster. Understood. But don't pretend to thank me for useless bull. That wasn't my aim, Al. You done? I cut in. I hated this. This conversation. All of it. Yeah. I guess. I'll see you soon, brother. Maybe. Or even better, hopefully never. I replied, cutting the call. I clenched my jaw, tossing my phone onto the table. I hated this whole socializing. Sure, Rayhan and Rayhana were my nephew and niece. But did I really know them? No. Did I want to make links with them? No. I needed no one. Not now and not in the future. I liked the way my life was, I didn't need a place to call home. Her face flashed in my mind once again and I closed my eyes. I didn't need her. Or I was trying to tell myself that anyway. It was a while later and I had needed to clear my mind, deciding to go stop at the hospital. Yeah, okay, Kiera was probably there. Either way, I was going. I reached the hospital and I wouldn't lie, the smell of hazelnut chocolate drowned out the rest of the scents that filled the air and I let it lead me to her. Pausing on the way to talk to one or two of my men, checking how they were doing. I now stopped outside the ward where Kiera was. She had a pair of medical gloves on as she was crouched down near my warrior's legs. A sharp burst of jealousy rushed through me as I saw her hand on his leg. Callum stood arms crossed, and Serena was smiling as she listened to Kiera. So, what would you suggest, miss? Callum asked curtly. The man had an ego but he was an impressive doctor. I know they say bandages should be kept dry etc. but we aren't really human. The correct mix of clove, datura, and golden seal soaking bandage would ease the pain and heal any infection caused. We have to remember that although yes, we are part human, we don't work the same way. Her voice came. So, you're saying this works? Callum replied skeptically. It could just cause an infection by getting the wound for a long period of time. I have tried it, so yes. If Luca here doesn't mind being the test subject, then you could try it on one of his wounds and see if it heals any quicker. She suggested, flashing Luca a smile. My eyes burned as I felt the ugly feeling of jealousy rise within me, and all four turned to me, probably sensing my aura. Alpha. Luca said, as Callum bowed his head respectfully. I walked in, looking at Kiera as she stood up slowly, noting the way her heart raced in rhythm with the rise. What's going on? I asked coldly. You're not messing with my warrior's healing, are you? Yeah, I've never cared before, but I did not want her hands on another man. Not in my pack. I glared at her in annoyance. She glared back disdainfully. No, I was suggesting something, an interesting theory, but I have no idea if it will really work. Let's try it on me. I don't mind checking out Kiera's method, Luca said, giving her a eating grin. I growled and he paled. She's Alpha Elijah's daughter. You will address her accordingly. I growled. No one had the right to call her Kiera. She raised an eyebrow. What is he meant to call me, Miss Westwood? Kiera's good. She said, giving him a smile. My eyes flashed and Luca didn't reply to her. I smirked victoriously, at least someone got the hint. She looked at me in annoyance, realizing he wasn't going to disobey his king. I think I get to choose what I want people to call me, she said, glaring at me. Madam, Alpha. There are patients here. Would you like to talk your lover's quarrel outside? Callum said politely. Kiera gasped and Serena stifled a giggle. We know. That's not what got us. Kiera struggled, trying to get 2 words out. Serves her right. Out you go, madam, we will try your theory, Callum said. Don't call me madam, she pouted. How did she pull off cute one? I sensed Serena watching me and I gave her a withering glare, making her flinch. I hated how observant she was. She and Darien were like middle-aged women who gossiped and jumped to assumptions over every god thing. Okay, maybe they weren't that off on me and Kiera, but still, don't get in my business. You hear the doc, I said, glaring at Kiera as I motioned to the door. She ignored me and looked at Luca. It was nice meeting you, see you soon. If you do test my theory today, we could compare the injuries tomorrow, she said to Callum, who grunted. I smirked slightly. She sure knew how to get stuff done. Yes, yes. We'll do that. Callum agreed reluctantly. She flashed him a smile, then looked at me. After you, Alpha. She said this mockingly, stressing on the word alpha. Girl. Continue talking like that and I'll have you on your knees. She moved a brow at me and I walked off, hearing her follow me. Your pack's impressive, she said softly, now looking at me as she fell into step next to me. You did a great job. I like it. Not that I need your approval. She gave me a dirty look. If I got a pound for every time she gave me one of her looks, I'd be way richer than I already am. We stepped out of the double doors and I welcomed the fresh air, mixed with her intoxicating scent. I'm excited to work there. Dr. Callum's pretty good. I glanced at her, watching the sunlight hit her hair. My breath hitched at how gorgeous she looked right now. One of the stray strands of her hair tickled her nose and my fingers itched to brush it aside. I was no longer listening to what she was saying. I reached out and brushed it aside, making her stop mid-sentence, her beautiful eyes widening as they looked into mine. Alpha Al. Jasmine had found me. Kiera and I both turned to see the pretty redhead. Jasmine Bloom, 5.10, grey eyes and a body many women would be envious of. I missed you, handsome. With those words, she wrapped her arms around my neck. I couldn't respond, a swirl of emotions flitting through me, but above all others I could feel and see was the hurt and confusion in Kiera's unique eyes. Kiera, the moment that wrapped her arms around Alejandro's neck, I felt a painful stab in my chest. My wolf was hurting and so was I. I tried my best to mask my emotions as I took my phone out of my pocket and whispered an "excuse me" whilst I walked away. It hurt like a sick. Why though? We were nothing. Breathe girl, you got this. I took deep breaths as I walked away. No, I was not going to cry, nor was I going to show I cared. I came to an abrupt stop before I almost knocked into none other than Carmen. She looked at me, with barely disguised resentment. Watch it, pup, she said. I didn't bump into you, so watch your attitude. I snapped back. Don't mess with me. I don't care if you're the warrior princess or the Lycan king himself. When I'm annoyed, I don't like anyone in my way. The confusion and pain I'd felt had now molded into annoyance and irritation. Her lips curled but she said nothing. With an attitude like that, you won't get far with the king. Who said I was trying to get far with him? I countered coldly. I pushed past her and stormed off back towards Alejandro's mansion. I was no longer in the mood to loiter around. I decided on taking a long shower and napping. I needed to cool off and I remembered my promise to Dad to behave. I had told Dr. Callum I'd come to the hospital from tomorrow and I was looking forward to it. The sound of Ava Max's Kings and Queens awoke me from my slumber and I growled in frustration. The glowing screen of my phone was the only light in the darkness. I reached for it and saw Liam's face on the screen. Sighing, I answered it. Yet. I groaned. Were you really sleeping? Raven said that, but you're not the type to nap unless you're mad. He trailed off, realizing he had hit the nail on the head. Guess that's what happens when you're twins. Yet and like I promised Dad, I'm behaving. I grumbled. Haha, serves you right. You're being annoying. I muttered, trying to feel for the lamp in the darkness, before it came on by a simple touch. I smiled. Touch lamps were convenient. So, I called to tell you Auntie Indy's getting back in like a week's time, so you'll get to see her there. He said. My eyes flew open and I all but screamed in excitement. Wait. Really? I thought she wasn't getting back until after the blood moon. Things changed. Her mate's done his job. I can't wait. I smiled, my excitement only growing. Auntie Indy's mate was part of Alejandro's pack. Being a warrior of his, they traveled a lot and we rarely saw them. It seemed like a fun thing to do, not for me, but it kept Auntie Indigo busy. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. She'd had countless miscarriages and no matter what she tried, the doctors said her body just wasn't able to contain the pregnancy. Just thinking of that, dampened my mood. Growing up, Auntie Indigo was the cool aunt who'd join in with you in messing around and also bail you out of trouble. Well, she got past Dad but not Mom. I spoke to Liam for a short while longer before I decided to get dressed and head downstairs. Raven had messaged asking where I was. Apparently, she and the Rossi siblings spent the afternoon in Alejandro's home cinema. That was something I wouldn't mind doing, having a nosy around this place. I now remembered the annoying redhead and my mood dropped a few more notches. Wait, why should I let it get to me? I was not going to let some annoying Lycan and his prissy little arm candy get my mood down. I refused to let anything ruin my few weeks of freedom. Just as I was browsing through my clothes, there was a knock on the door. Kia. Raven's voice came. Yeah. You up? Yup. Well, dinner with the king and some guests is coming up soon, Serena said to dress good. It's more a formal thing. Right, I said, frowning. You okay? Of course, I was just tired so I napped. I lied. Sorry Raven, but I'll tell you the truth later. All right, I don't believe you. Make it quick and be down in 30 minutes, okay? Sure. I replied. Nothing got past her. Now to dress like I don't care. I didn't pack many dresses, not thinking I'd need them. Sighing inwardly, I looked at my two options. A red and a midnight blue. Red was a bit much, so I decided on the blue. It was a lace bodycon dress, with cap sleeves. The lace top layer was a little longer, reaching my knees, and the bottom layer was a handspan shorter. I looked at the 2-inch silver heels. I could wear them and suffer from pain all night. I know what I was doing, trying to look good and show everyone I was amazing. I didn't want to act so shallow though. I put the heels aside and began working on my makeup. Nude lips, smoky blue eyes and a winged liner. I straightened my already straight hair and back combed it from the top to add some volume, styling it in a quiff and left a few strands to frame my face. I chose some silver earrings and a bracelet and then stood up looking at my reflection. To with it. I'll wear these heels today. I looked good, really good. I did a slow turn in the mirror, the dress hugged my figure nicely. I had inherited Mum's curves along with a little extra height. I smiled in satisfaction and left my room. I stepped into the dining room. Sure enough, the guests were the redhead and an older man with ginger hair. The woman sat directly on Alejandro's right, much to my annoyance. All eyes turned towards me, but I refused to even look at Alejandro as I waved at Raven, Rayhana and Rayhan. I didn't miss how Rayhan's eyes ran over me, blushing lightly as he turned away. I smiled slightly. If it could get that kind of reaction from a friend, then. I didn't look at him, although I could sense his burning gaze on me. I apologize if I'm a little late, I ended up sleeping for longer than I anticipated. I said before taking the seat next to Rayhan. I now looked at Alejandro. His eyes were dark and his jaw was clenched. Who is this? The man asked. Alejandro ignored him. Alpha Bill, this is Alpha Elijah's daughter, Kiara Darien said with a smirk on his face. He and Serena were opposite Raven and me. You look great, Kia. Rayhan said, flashing me a wink as he leaned over Rayhana to look at me. Oh, don't give her that. Get in line, Mr. There are plenty of men wanting a piece of her. Raven boasted. I'm Jasmine Bloom and this is my father Alpha Bill, of the Quick Fang Pack. The redhead now said, looking at me keenly. Weren't you the one with Alpha earlier when I came, and you just walked off? Nice to meet you. Apologies, I had to make a call. I replied smoothly. Was it nice to meet her? My foot. Yes, I am being a petty brat right now, but seeing her arms around Alejandro threw me off. I didn't know what to make of them. She seemed close to him. We all tucked in, with Alpha Bill boasting about his latest business ventures. I could tell he was very prideful and loved to gloat. I was kind of surprised Alejandro was allowing him to prattle on. I mean, didn't he have a short fuse? I glanced at him, only to find him looking at me, clearly not paying an ounce of attention to Bill. My heart skipped a beat and I looked away quickly. So is Elijah still living in that tiny house he built? He chortled, now looking at me. My eyes flashed in annoyance. Not that it should be any of your concern, but why don't you ask me how well our pack is doing instead? I'm sure Dad's reputation speaks for himself, he is the strongest alpha around. That would be Alpha Alejandro, sweetie. Jasmine added with a small irritating smile. Alpha Alejandro is a Lycan. He is at another level, and he is the king. I'm talking about werewolf alphas. I said confidently, now turning my attention back to Alpha Bill. I don't mean any disrespect, but perhaps you should stop worrying about your business ventures and work out a little more. For an alpha, you look rather tubby. Okay, maybe I was a bit too blunt. Alpha Bill's face turned as red as his hair and I heard Alejandro snicker. My cheeks heated up but I dared not look at him. How? How dare you? Alpha Alejandro. Will you allow this child to mock me like this in your home? I picked up my glass. Dad did say I only needed to behave around Alejandro. You did mock her father first, Bill. I can't really stop her from defending him, can I? His words made everyone look at him in surprise. You can hot stuff? You're king, remember? Jasmine said, placing her hand on his arm. Alejandro turned his cold glare on her and she instantly removed her hand. Don't remind me of who I am. Try to remember it yourself before you or your father tell me what I should do. He said dangerously. Her pale skin only seemed to pale a little more. Uncle is so nice. Rayhana said as she popped a full potato in her mouth. We all looked at her. Yeah, maybe she was a little delusional. There were a wide variety of words I'd use to describe Alejandro. Smoking, delicious, yummylicious, dangerous, I could go on. But nice was not one of them. Alpha Bill was now eating as if he were being forced to eat poison and I stifled a giggle looking at his face. Kiara. Alejandro said suddenly. My giggles vanished as I turned to look at him, trying not to relieve the way my name sounded on his lips. His face was unreadable and it took all my willpower to control my emotions. I knew everyone could hear my racing heart. A girl could simply be scared of him, right? Yes. I said, sipping my juice, not bothering to spare him more than a second of my gaze. I could feel his aura darkening. Seems like His Royal Highness didn't like to hear a no. Well, too bad. Meet me in my office on the first floor after dinner, I need to discuss a few things with you. I raised my eyebrow. Goddess, no. Being alone with him was not what I needed. Can't we just discuss them now? I said nonchalantly. He growled dangerously. Don't push me. Fine. I said, exhaling in frustration. Jerk. He gave me a cold smirk and I wondered what he was thinking behind those dark orbs of his. We have a lot to discuss too, Alpha. Bill interjected. Tomorrow. Tonight, I'm busy. Alejandro replied coldly. I felt several eyes on me but dared not look up. I knew Alejandro was looking at me but I had no idea what he meant. I won't deny that my stomach was fluttering with nerves, and dare I say it, anticipation. Alejandro, from the moment she walked into the room, I lost it. The slight bounce to her destroyed me. But rules and consequences, I wanted her. I watched as she had taken a seat, ignoring me. I don't know what my problem was, but when she had walked off after Jasmine had rushed over, I had been tempted to talk to her. About what? No idea. But why do I care, right? We were not meant to be anyway. Yet, I could keep telling myself that. We all know I don't care about what's meant or not. There have been a couple of women at a few mating balls that I've taken an interest in. They found their mate, but when I showed some interest, they were willing to throw away a future for a one-night stand. Not sure what they thought, that I'd claim and mark them? The point is, if I wanted something, I took it. That was the problem. I never cared about the aftermath, but did I or did I not now? I watched as Rayhan complimented her. He was my nephew, but I was getting fed up with male teens who were acting like wannabe men. Irritation consumed me thanks to a certain desire. As dinner had progressed, I hadn't been able to focus on much, trying not to undress her with my eyes. Then I went and told her to meet me in my office. What exactly was I going to discuss? Yet, I had no clue. I now paced my office, taking out a cigarette and lighting it just as there was a knock on the door. Her delicious smell of hazelnut chocolate mixed with something else filled my senses, and I tilted my head. Get in, I said coldly. The door opened and she stepped inside. Close the door. Her heartbeat quickened as she shut the door and looked at me. What did you want? She asked. Definitely not you, in case that's what you thought when I called you, I remarked. Yet, I have a habit of wanting to her. She frowned at me. Good. Because I have better things to do than waste my time with you. Jasmine's still waiting for you too, she said, now tapping her foot. So, hurry up. I walked over to her, satisfied when her heartbeat quickened. Is it just me or are you dumb? How many times do I have to tell you to show me respect? I growled, backing her up against the door. I needed an excuse to get close to her, like always. I couldn't keep away, even when I tried. I'm being well behaved, what do you want me to do? Bow down to you? Respect is earned, not demanded. Humph, don't get all wise and on me. We both know you don't even know the meaning of the word respect. Oh, I do. I just pick and choose who's worthy of it. She said, now looking me over. My eyes flashed. Her uncaring attitude was irritating out of me. Wasn't she the one who got turned on the other day by me just being close to her? Watch that mouth of yours before I shut you up for good, I growled, slamming my hand against the wall next to her. She didn't even flinch as she looked me square in the eyes. I held my cigarette in the other hand, glaring at her as I blew out a string of smoke. She didn't even cough, her defiant eyes burning into mine. She wasn't making this easier on herself. I'd like to see you try. What are you going to do? Drown me in smoke? She snapped, now trying to push me away. I didn't even budge an inch as I looked down at her. From this angle I could see the tip of her smooth cleavage. I have my ways, you don't want to know. I said quietly, slowly looking up into her eyes. I knew she caught me looking and I didn't really give a tone. Maybe I do. She said, her eyes filled with the same emotions I saw that very first night. Our eyes locked, her gorgeous blue-green against my dark ones as I took another drag of my cigarette. We were mere inches apart, my leg touched her thigh slightly and I was too aware of it. You're a stubborn little thing, aren't you? I asked quietly. A pretty one. I like to think of it as a perk. She said softly. Her voice was breathless and I knew she knew there was no real reason I called her here. I blew out the smoke slowly but this time she parted her lips, taking it in. I didn't care about the consequences. My hand left the wall as I tangled it in the back of her lush locks and crashed my lips against hers. Delicious tingles rushed through me as I relished in the sweetness of her mouth. This was a taste of heaven, the only kind I wanted. Her breath hitched in a gasp that had no room to leave her mouth as I wrapped my free arm around her waist. Still holding my cigarette, I placed my hand on her and pulled her roughly against my body. I deepened the kiss, as if this were to be my only chance. I wanted more, way more. I backed her into the door, groaning lowly as she wrapped her arms around my neck and pressed herself against me completely. Her fingers ran through my hair and brushed my neck. Her body meshed against mine's perfectly. She was smoking hot. Her lips moved in sync with mine as I kissed her hungrily, the frustration, confusion, and desire that had consumed me only adding to the kiss. The intoxicating scent of her filled the room like a drug. I squeezed her, making her whimper. I slipped my tongue into her mouth, exploring every corner and she gasped when I svcked on her tongue hard. Consequences, I was not going to stop now. I pulled her dress up, letting the cool air hit her as I ran my hand over it. A salacious moan dropped from her lips as she broke away from my lips breathless. I didn't stop, I couldn't. I kissed down her smooth neck, leaving a trail of marks in my wake. She moaned in what was probably pain and pleasure but I didn't care. The hunger for more had completely consumed me. Alejandro. I didn't allow any random woman to call me by my name. But, from her lips, could she sound any? I lifted her, growling in approval when she wrapped her legs around my waist and carried her over to my desk. Pushing the pile of paperwork onto the ground, as I placed her down and bent over her. Tossing my cigarette on the ground, I snuffed it out with my foot whilst claiming her lips in a hungry kiss once again. I wanted to hear my name on her lips once more, I wanted to hear her scream it out, to make her voice louder than that back at her pack was able to make her. I moved back, looking into her eyes. They were darkened with desire as she looked back at me. I hated looking women in the eyes when I do them, but there was something about hers that drew me in. She wanted me and I wanted her, and that was all I cared about. Who cared if she was half my age, or the damage this might do to her mentally? I would leave her dripping at the very thought of this night. It's way too late to back out. I whispered huskily, "Who said I want out?" She murmured. I smirked arrogantly. Now that was what I wanted to hear. Without further delay. Kiera, the look in his eyes. My heart was going crazy, in fact my entire body was. There was something about him. Was it because he was the ultimate alpha who dripped with appeal? Or was it that dark and dangerous hunger I saw in his eyes, as if he wanted to consume and destroy me all at once? A low growl hummed in his chest, his hands now running up my thighs until he cupped me again. Kissing Alejandro was like playing with a live electrical wire. It fascinated me, but at the same time, it could be deadly. His hands grabbed me. His fingers pinched me, forcing a whimper from me. Every kiss and touch left my body needy for more. His intoxicating smoky woody scent devoured me. I realized what I was about to do. It didn't last long. My eyes were wide as I stared up at him. He gave me a smirk. "What's the matter? Can't play with a big boy?" His deep voice made me shiver as he got rid of his. "Who said I've never played with bigger?" I questioned. "Lie. But he doesn't need to know that." He smirked, grabbing me by the back of my hair. "Oh yeah? Then I guess I won't need to go easy on you." I tugged him closer too. Did I look like a kid to him? My eyes stayed fixed on his face. I wanted was to satisfy him if he'd let me. Right now, all I can focus on was how good he was making me feel. I didn't care who heard me. The pleasure Alejandro was inflicting upon me wiped every care or common sense from my mind. "Ah, Alejandro!" I let out a loud whimper. Goddess, he really was huge. I felt tears of pleasure and pain sting my eyes as I closed them, unable to focus on anything. I didn't even realize how loud I was, but I couldn't contain it. This was completely different from anything I had ever experienced before. The pain and pleasure combined was something new. Something that awoke something deep within me. I could breathe. My own pleasure was building and I knew I was nearing. "I'm coming," I whispered, kissing his neck. "Kiera," he murmured, burying his head into my shoulder, where my mate would one day mark me. The sudden move sent me over the edge. Only the soft scream of pleasure that left me drowned out the sound of our skin slapping against each other. "Alejandro!" I breathed, trying to keep up, but I couldn't. I felt his body tense, knowing he was near. "Oh, that's it!" I gasped. Just as his release hit him and I felt all energy I had left me. I had never had such incredible in my life. Although I knew I would be feeling it tomorrow, I didn't care. The last thing I remember was him tugging my head back by my hair and searching my eyes. I wasn't sure what he was looking for with those blazing red eyes of his, as I slowly closed them, letting sleep overtake me. Alejandro, her eyelids fluttered shut and I felt a sliver of worry flicker through me. I had struggled to hold back from completely ravaging her. But I had never felt that sort of hunger before. Yes, I sometimes felt like killing and I did. But not when I was having linked. She had been perfect, beyond perfect. After a taste of her, I felt like I had been missing out all my life. Even the way she tasted. It had driven me and I hadn't been able to hold back. I lifted her still body, bridal style. Trying to ignore the foreign feeling that now settled within my chest, burying it away. The room smelled sweat and the delicious scent of her arousal. I could get used to this heaven on earth. I frowned deeply, picking up my shirt and draped it over her body before I exited the office. I wasn't sure if anyone had heard her screams because she had been loud. I smirked at the thought. I liked it, shows she enjoyed it. That was another issue, I don't talk about a woman's needs. I took what I wanted and that was it, but I had actually wanted to pleasure her. I walked down the hall to her room only to come face to face with not one pup, but 3. Well, Rayhan seemed to click instantly. His face drained of color and the confusion settled in, something that changed to anger instantly. What? He said as Raven and Rayhana exchanged looks. Rayhana seemed to have gone an interesting shade of red. Watch it. I growled dangerously at Rayhan, before I opened the door to her bedroom and carried her inside. How could you? When Alpha Elijah trusted you, I didn't do her. I growled venomously, pulling the bedding back and placing her in it, pulling the sheet up to her neck. I looked at her for a moment. Her lips were bruised and her cheeks were flushed, but she was glowing. I turned and looked at Rayhan. His eyes blazed with pure fury, only resulting in mine flashing in return. Rayhan. He's right, Raven said, quietly. Let's wait to hear from Kiera, for once, listen to the brat. I said, making my way to the door. Rayhan blocked me, and I won't lie, it caught me off guard. I raised an eyebrow. Even so. She's only 18. Didn't you even consider that? He asked quietly. She's legal, not that rules have ever bothered me. I remarked coldly with a dangerous smirk. Yeah, we all know you anyone. But you could have at least left her. My eyes flashed red and I slammed him into the wall, my anger burning within me like an endless fire of rage. Don't, and I mean don't, ever tell me what to do. What's wrong, Rayhan? Did you want her? His eyes flashed a deep emerald green, clenching his jaw as he shoved me off him. I let go of him of my own accord, smirking. Yeah, I hit the nail on the head. You're sick, get out. Wrong statement. I smashed his head into the wall behind. Rayhana screamed, but I didn't get care. I won't tear your head off your shoulders because you're Raphael's pup, but disrespect me one more time and I swear I won't hesitate to tear you to shreds. Now get out. He was about to reply when Raven hurried over. Okay, I'm sorry on his behalf. I'll go. She said, glancing at Kiera who was fast asleep, not even realizing what was happening. She wasn't an angel and I didn't force her. But yet, guess I'm the monster in every situation. I didn't wait for them to leave and left the room in anger. I needed to clear my head and I knew a run would work. I entered my room, opening the window, I shifted, and jumped out. Kiera, I awoke to a strong ache between my legs. My entire body felt as if I had been hit by a train. I groaned as I turned in bed. It was getting light outside. Where was I? The bed felt different and the room was darker than mine. My eyes widened when I remembered what happened between Alejandro and me, and the fact that I was not at my pack but at his. My stomach did a nervous flip as I remembered what happened. My heart raced and I placed a hand on my chest. I had linked with Alejandro Rossi, the Lycan king. Goddess! What have I done? My cheeks burned at the memory. Oh goddess, he was a beast. I had never seen that big, and I have seen a lot. Being a werewolf, nudity wasn't abnormal. Raven and I used to play a game and give guys a secret derating, depending on the size. The only exception was Liam, who I did not want to see. Ever. Yes, we were little perverts, but hey, it's all good. The boys did the same with us, so why not? I pushed the blanket off me, my legs feeling like lead as I turned the touch lamp to a bright setting and looked around the room. Did Alejandro bring me here last night? I dragged my legs off the bed and stood up, only to stumble and almost fall on my face. Beast! What? It was already sunrise, which meant I should have felt better by now. Groaning, I staggered to the bedroom door, feeling for the light switch until I turned it on. The first thing I saw was the dent and blood on the wall. That had not been there yesterday. What had happened? My stomach sank as several assumptions flitted through me, but I couldn't really go find out from Raven until I had showered and dressed. Entering the bathroom, I looked in the mirror. The most obvious noticeable change were the hickeys that littered my entire neck and shoulders. I was also glowing. Kiera, the way he said my name sent a shiver of pleasure up my spine as I closed my eyes, reminiscing about his touch. The way he tasted. The way his lips felt. His touch. I moved back from the sink and sat on the edge of the bathtub. He was a dream come true when it came to pleasuring a woman. Don't get me wrong, Damon was great, but compared to Alejandro. I closed my eyes. Now what? I couldn't mix with him, that was setting myself up for trouble. Then again, I doubt he'd care anymore. He got what he wanted. I sighed, turning. I put the plug in the bath. I needed a long bath. If I were to help at the hospital, I needed to have some energy. 2 hours later I looked flawless, thanks to the foundation covering all my hickeys. I pulled my hair into a high pony and was already dressed in a soft mint halter neck top paired with white shorts and sandals. I still felt achy down there and I had half a mind to go complain, but the way I was M0ANING last night, he'd only just throw it back in my face. I left my room and walked across to Raven's. I knocked on it. Raven! I hissed. The door was pulled open and Raven dragged me out of her room. In surprise, I realized Rayhana was sleeping in her bed before the door shut. I looked at her curiously as she looked me over. I was shocked she was even awake. Goddess Kia! What happened last night? She hissed. I blushed deeply and looked away. Why? Because. She hissed, dragging me back into my room. Because the Alpha King carried you to your room. Then Rayhan said a few words to him and he smashed his head into that wall. Rayhana couldn't stop crying. My heart plummeted as I looked at the wall. Oh goddess, what have I done? I didn't mean for that to happen or for me to lose consciousness, I said, placing my hand on my forehead. I hope Rayhan was okay. Well, things went bad. Rayhan said he should have at least spared you. Alpha Alejandro didn't take well to that and threatened him. Raven now frowned at me. Look, I love you Kia and that's why I'm going to say this. What are you doing? Your actions will hurt others. Unless it's something you really want, please think a little. Her words affected me and I felt a little upset, not with her but with the way she thought of it. I didn't mean for my actions to bother anyone. I wanted a break from my dad and Liam for this very reason, but it seemed even here there was someone worried or concerned. I wish Rayhan hadn't bothered, and I really hope he didn't tell Liam. I sighed. I get it, or maybe everyone just needs to give me some space. I'm tired of being known as the precious little Alpha's daughter, I don't need protecting. I just want some space. I said frustrated. Raven frowned, crossing her arms. You're already keeping a lot of secrets from me Kia. First Damon and now this? Seriously, where did we go wrong? I didn't tell you about Damon because he made me promise not to. I said in frustration. It was nothing serious. Fine. But let me tell you this. The Lycan King doesn't have a mate for a reason. He's heartless and just uses people for his own gain. He's going to hurt you Kiera. He's only enjoying you because of the chase you're giving him. Once you fall for him, he will drop you like the rest. Remember that and the rest is up to you. I didn't reply. She gave me a small smile. Her unique colored eyes looked sympathetic before she turned and left. I wanted to cry. Her words had stung me and I sighed, taking a deep shuddering breath. I'll go for a walk and then head to the hospital. I wasn't in the mood for breakfast and neither did I want to see anyone. Should I speak to Rayhan? I couldn't bring myself to, not right now, and so I just turned and left the mansion silently. I walked slowly, the sun was up and I could finally see. I couldn't for the life of me forget Raven's words. I stopped suddenly when his scent filled my nose and I looked up to see him standing there in a pair of baggy shorts. He was covered in dirt and his hair fell in front of his face. He now smoothed it back, his pose as cold and arrogant as ever. His eyes were fixed on me. I didn't speak, hoping that maybe he would. Please say something. Something to prove Raven wrong. His face was emotionless as he cast me a once-over before he looked away and walked right past me. I closed my eyes, feeling a strong surge of pain squeezed my chest. He didn't care. I told my wolf, I could feel her sadness too. Raven had been right, but what did I expect? That he'd even have some sort of feelings for me? Why should he? I was nothing but a young she-wolf who had been stupid enough to fall for the Lycan King's charms. Kiera, I wasn't going to cry over my own mistake. If he wants to act like last night didn't happen, then I will do the same. I made my way past the training grounds. My eyes watched the training regime that was currently going on. It was brutal, I could see there was no such thing as holding back. It was like the survival of the fittest. I heard quiet footsteps behind me and paused. Greg, I said, recognizing his scent. Morning. he said in reply. I sighed inwardly. I'm headed to the hospital. You don't need to follow me, I'm safe here. Still, I need to do my job. He replied firmly. What time did he even get up? I turned and looked at him. Look, I'm fine and I don't want someone following me constantly. Please just give me space. I know I probably sounded harsh, but I didn't want someone worrying over me. Look around, there's plenty of people here and I'm perfectly safe. Not everyone can be trusted, you should know that. He said through the link. He wasn't wrong, but I didn't have the patience to listen today. I will be fine, I'll drop you an update hourly via Mind link. I'm going to the hospital and I don't need you worrying over me. I said curtly. Got it. Just be careful, princess. I frowned at the term, a term many called me because I am the alpha's daughter. He walked off and I found my attention returning to the warriors. I watched them for a short while before I continued to the hospital. Dr. Callum seemed to approve of me being there nice and early as he put me to work immediately, saying he wanted to see my knowledge of medicinal herbs. I knew it was a test for him to check if he could actually trust me around patients. The task before me was several unmarked jars. He wanted me to make a note of what each mix or paste consisted of. He left me in the room, saying if I were done soon we would go check on Luca's bandage. I now looked at the long line of jars. This was going to be a piece of cake. I put some music on low volume through my phone, not wanting to disturb anyone as I had forgotten my earphones, before getting to work. Elderwood, lavender, clove. I wrote the names in my large writing on a sticky note as I sniffed the herb carefully, not wanting to miss anything. The task wasn't as easy as it appeared, it had taken me more than an hour. At the end of it there were 2 jars I was still stuck on. My head felt fuzzy, probably thanks to all the herbs I had been inhaling for the last hour. I massaged my temples before I took a deep sniff of one of the 2 remaining jars. Goddess, what am I missing? My eyes suddenly flew open as the answer came to be like the flip of a light switch. I smirked. Smart move, Doc, but not smart enough. Satisfied with my answers, I wondered if I should go find Dr. Callum. I mean, he didn't come back even once. It took me less than 5 minutes to find him. He was talking to 2 nurses and I stayed far away, not wanting to intrude. The moment he turned and the women worked off, I ran over, stumbling as pain jarred up my ankle. I saw his gaze fall to my ankle, his brow creasing slightly, but it lasted less than a second as he crossed his arms and looked at me. Are you done, madam? He said. I said don't call me that, I protested. I won't disobey my alpha. Now, why are you wasting time? I'm done, I said, feeling like a 10-year-old child telling my teacher I was finished with my work. Already? He asked skeptically. Well, come see for yourself. I said. I really wanted to move on to something more exciting. He grunted and fell in step with me, looking at me for a moment as if he wanted to say something but then changed his mind. When we got back to the room I waited patiently as he looked at all of the jars, taking a sniff and then looking at the note. He finally screwed the last jar lid on and smiled slightly. I won't lie, I'm impressed. Alpha Elijah has done a fine job in teaching you. I frowned. I'm sorry, I love my dad but he was not the one who taught me. If anything, it was Mom's suggestion to ask Grandma Amelia. My teaching has nothing to do with Dad. It was my mother, Alpha Scarlet, who taught me to fight, cook and encouraged me to follow my interest in medical healing. I said, crossing my arms. Why does everyone immediately compliment Dad? He chuckled. Well, he is the alpha, Mom is also an alpha. It isn't because Dad's an alpha, it's because he's a man. Okay, I get it. He said, waving his hand. I frowned. No, he didn't, but I'll show them. You even picked up on the wolfsbane. Yes, I was a little thrown off as it was such a low amount, the scent was barely distinguishable. Well, I needed to see what level you are at. The king's warriors need the very best care. That's understandable, I said as we both left the room. So, do we see Lycan now? Yes. I smiled, looking forward to this. I still felt achy but it was gradually easing up. We reached his ward pretty soon. Luca, time to check your injuries. The young man sat up, wincing slightly. Not going to lie, my leg feels a lot better than my other injuries. He grunted. I moved forward quickly, raising his bed and propping cushions behind him. Dr. Callum didn't reply and began to remove the bandage from his arm injury first and then the one from his leg. I stayed silent as I saw Callum's eyes look at both wounds and then at the bandages. The one from his leg had a discoloration to the blood whilst the one from his arm was just blood. This is interesting, he remarked. The herbs help pull any poison from the blood, hence the healing process is faster, I explained. This is remarkable, Dr. Callum said. Where did you learn that? My great-uncle's work, I said proudly. Thanks, Luca said, now looking at me. I gave a small smile, glad it had worked. I guess I don't need to doubt you. So, what would you like? Some small injuries or shall I throw you head first into those who need the most help? He smiled, and for some reason, I felt like there was a lot more to that comment than he let on. I think I want to go head first. I am only here for a few weeks, I want to learn something new and gain some experience that I can't get back home. I said with determination. Perfect. Blood is not an issue for you. No, I said, glancing at Luca. He was covered in plenty of blood. Then follow me. He paused and looked at Luca. I will get one of the other doctors to apply the herbs to the rest of your wounds and apply fresh bandages. Thanks, miss, and document. Call me Kiera, I said. Luca just gave me a small grin but said nothing more. Seems like there was another one who wouldn't disobey his king. Dr. Callum led me to the second floor. The moment the lift opened, I could smell something off. It was very faint and I closed my eyes as I walked, trying to make sense of it. With each step we took closer to our destination, the smell got stronger. The smell of rotten flesh, something putrid and infected blood. I opened my eyes when I heard Callum stop. He took a deep breath and unlocked the door using a key card. What is this place? I asked. This is the place our infected warriors are kept. Those who have been injured by manangles or wendigos to a level that they may not make it. He said, his voice dead serious. The lighting was darker here. The floor, unlike in the main hospital, was dark slate and the ceiling was black with metal beams. There were white spotlights scattered across the ceiling, emitting a bluey-white light. A line of warriors stood guard outside the rooms. My heart was thumping as I looked at the glass front rooms. Inside each room was a werewolf. Some were still, others were writhing and there were one or two that were banging on the glass. Their words were muted by the soundproof walls but I could see they didn't seem normal. It didn't look like a hospital anymore, but some sort of prison or experiment lab. I shuddered at the thought. The glass is bulletproof, they can't break out. However, when someone goes in, you must have guards with you at all times. He said. It was as if he was a completely changed person now. There were no grunts or light smiles, just deadpan and his tone was heavy. We walked down the hall. There were 13 patients here and a few rooms were empty. There were several doctors and nurses walking around. I noticed they each had a badge and their lab coats were dark gray. I guess only some people can come here. Do the patients often get better? I asked quietly. About 1 in 20. He said quietly as he held out a gray coat. I took it and put it on, feeling a little nervous. Are you ready for this? I don't want to force you but it's clear the injured downstairs were your normal encounters. I see potential in you and I think I'd like a new point of view on the injured up here. Yes, I am, I said determinedly. He nodded as we walked out of the doctor's room and into one of the patient's rooms. From here, I could see he was actually strapped to the bed with chains and straps. He was attacked and bitten several times by a man-angle. Callum said as he opened the door to room 13. 2 warriors entered first. Their masks covered their faces and they both held a weapon in hand. Their build was bulky and intimidating. The strong rotten smell of decay and something else hit my nose as I tried my best not to gag. My heart was thumping as I slowly inched closer to Dr. Callum. Come on, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these injuries. I nodded, taking a deep breath through my mouth, in a fruitless attempt to not breathe in the pungent smell as I walked right up to the examination bed. Alejandro, I had spent the night running, hunting and even working out. I don't know why but I couldn't face coming back. I had never been so thrown off after X, all I could think about was how I felt when I do with her. I wanted to taste her again, to feel her against me once more. To taste those lips of hers and to actually eat her out. Yeah, that was something I never did. I'd talked the favor willingly but I wasn't one to return it. Not until it came to her. Kiera Westwood. Just her name was making me throb. I finally headed back home when the sun had risen. I stopped in my tracks when I saw her standing there dressed in tiny white shorts that showed off her thigh tattoo and her legs, with a green top that only made her eyes look greener. She looked directly at me. Her heart was racing and I had no idea what she was expecting from me. I didn't know what I wanted either, so I just walked past her, feeling something tighten in my chest. It was strange, I never cared about anything but she was doing something to me, and it was getting hard to resist. It took my all not to slam her against the wall. I closed my eyes. What did I want? Instead, I headed inside, using all my willpower not to go back and call out to he. I needed to avoid her if I could. I guess I should focus on that bill so he can leave the pack. Not to mention there was the council meeting in a few days. I showered, before mind-linking Darien to send Bill to my work office. I glanced towards my home office, last night vividly coming back to me. Foreign feelings consumed me and I frowned, turning away. She was messing with me and she wasn't even around. Alpha, Bill said politely, entering my office and taking a seat opposite me. So, have you come to a decision about the land? I said, skipping formalities. He shuffled in his seat, his face changing to an interesting shade of plum. He was nervous, I could smell it from here. The dude needed a shower too. I resisted wrinkling my nose. Disgusting piece of. I have, and well. I have a pre-proposition for you. He spluttered, his face going darker. I raised my eyebrow. What was this proposition? That he couldn't even speak? Loser. Keep talking, I don't have all day, I will give you the land, free to keep forever. As a gift, I mean as a wedding gift. Take my daughter as your Luna and after I die, even my pack will become yours. He shouted. I wasn't deaf, why did he feel he had to bark like a dog? Chill out. I growled, resisting the urge to massage my temples. The quick fang pack was a decent size but I wasn't looking to expand my pack. I only needed warrior wolves. As for the land, I'd take it one way or another. Usually, I would have declined the offer straight up. I knew the council wanted me to take a mate, but… Kiera. I looked out the window at the shining sun. What did I do? Kiera was young, yet, I didn't seem to care when I with her. She deserved someone who could love he. Not someone who would destroy her. Even if my assumption was correct and maybe just maybe she was my mate, I wouldn't be able to treat her the way she deserved to be. Jasmine was 25, smart and knew when to shut her mouth. She was the type who wouldn't even dare to speak up against me if I do another woman. The type who would just be happy with the title of queen. Yet she had the experience to run a pack, as the default heir to her father's pack after her brother's death. She knew how stuff worked. The council wanted me to choose a bride of Alpha heritage. Jasmine had never found her mate, possibly dead. I guess that was another reason to choose her when our situations were so similar. Kiera was 18, feisty and strong-willed. The type to challenge and question my every decision. The type to keep me grounded, or try to. She was compassionate, strong, and entertaining. The type of woman that if you had her, you wouldn't even consider looking at another woman. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at my pack. She would be the type of queen who didn't care about the title and care for this pack as her own. If she didn't turn out to be my mate, then she would find her sooner or later. And if she was destined for me, then one day, she would tire of waiting and take a mate of her own choice. Who wouldn't want her? I remembered a few council meetings ago when someone mentioned her eyesight. They had said to Elijah, that they wondered why the goddess had blessed them with a faulty pup. He had flipped and said that any man would be lucky to have her but none would ever be worthy of her. Back then, I had rolled my eyes as I told him to let go of the other alpha. But now, I had to admit he was right. The thought of her with another man, made my chest squeeze painfully. The very feeling sent bolts of shock through me, carrying the weight of realization with it. I cared for her. I cared for her. Did I even have the capacity to care? I don't know. Recently I was feeling stuff I've not felt in a long time. My mind went back to many years ago when Kiera had given me a flower for saving her. I had crushed that flower under my foot, and with it, I had probably crushed her little heart. That was what I was good at, hurting people. I didn't have the mental state to love, nor did I want to. My purpose was to govern the werewolf race, and that's it. Alpha. Bill brought me back to the present and I schooled my face back into its usual I don't look before I turned to him. First of all, who do you think you are trying to bargain with me? I said coldly, walking over to him. He cowered in fear. And no, my king. Even if you refuse, UN may take over the lands and do what you need to, he spluttered, spit flying from his mouth. I looked at him in disgust. How was he Jasmine's father? They were opposites. I mean, with Kiera you could tell she was Elijah's oh no. I was never going to admit that. No. I glared at the pathetic alpha before me, crossing my arms as I turned away. I had made my decision. I'll marry Jasmine. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.